I played Borderlands 1 when it came out in October 2009. I was not even in high school yet, and somehow I managed to convince my parents to buy the game for me. The game's atmosphere really resonated with me growing up, and to this day, few games have left an impression on me the way Borderlands 1 has. I have put tons of hours in nearly all the other mainline titles in the series, but as a complete package, not only is Borderlands 1 great, but it's still my favorite one in the series. I was doing another run of Borderlands 1 when I decided to make this video. Coincidentally, I was about to enter one of my favorite areas in the game, Trash Coast. The footage you are seeing right now is that gameplay, and I was lucky enough to capture a little bit of everything that makes the game so good. Throughout the video, you'll see me speeding up and adding inserts to the footage. Now, let's get straight to it. The reason why Borderlands 1 is great is because it gives us just the right amount and doesn't linger or feel like it's overstaying its welcome. But while it's here, it gives us an amazing experience. One of the first things you'll notice is my weapon. Borderlands has always been known for its insane amount of guns. Within each different gun type, there are millions of different combinations of weapon parts, like stocks, grips, barrels, sights, and they create all the different numbers you see when looking at a gun stats. One of the things that makes this game special is that they were able to make each of the different weapon types very enjoyable to use. The repeater pistol and SMGs are a blast to spray away at enemies. The combat rifles and sniper rifles are well designed if you enjoy picking off enemies from afar. The machine guns, which is my favorite archetype in any Borderlands game, gives you just the right amount of versatility for whether you want to get up close or distance yourself from enemies. The rocket launcher is great for blowing up vehicles or groups of enemies, and the shotguns are so fucking fun to use. They made the gameplay so refined that 13 years later, I still get excited when I find a fast fire rate machine gun like the one you're seeing me use right now. It makes trying a new weapon a more enjoyable process. For example, up until now, my favorite sniper rifle in the game has been the Volcano, but recently I found a penetrator with fire elemental damage, and it just mowed enemies down. It became my new favorite sniper, and who knows if I would have tried it if the guns weren't so approachable to use. Throughout the video, you will see me taking a moment to look at the guns that dropped. I'm considering if the weapon is an upgrade or not to what I'm currently using. One of the great sights in this game is seeing a weapon that has 3 green arrows pointing up next to its stats, especially if that's your favorite weapon type. It's not like Borderlands 2 and onward, where it feels like they keep adding more and more stats on the screen. It's just the basics, and that's all you really need from a first glance. Also, the stat amounts are just right in this game. Borderlands 2 was notorious for the large numbers of its gear stats. Borderlands 3 brought the figures to a more manageable number, but overall, I think the less is more approach works better for Borderlands. Let's talk about the game's regions next. Borderlands 1 has large, hub-like locations, which typically have a bounty board, like the Doll Headlands or Rust Commons West, and they have several different points of interest, like bandit camps or Monster's Nest, and almost always have a mission tied to them. There are also tons of smaller areas, like the Trash Coast or Crom's Valley for example, which in their case just branch off into 2 large corridors. One side has all the side missions, the other has the boss and his henchmen. Each area has the right amount of proportions and side missions, so you don't ever feel like you are staying overly long in an area. And while each different biome may not be as diverse or dynamic as the later games, the pacing and length of each area is more important, and in this game, they executed the best. Borderlands 1 in general is not a long game. It can take you around 12 to 15 hours to complete all the quests, and so it makes starting a new game plus much more approachable. The first time I beat this game, I jumped right back in because I wanted to reach level 50. Another thing that makes Borderlands 1 so great is that atmosphere-wise, they nailed what they were trying to go for with this game. The in-game soundtrack makes you feel like you're in a planet that's been abandoned and left to decay. Almost all the people living there have either turned to banditry, gone insane as the game cover shows, or both. But it is the contrast that really makes it something special. Alexander, a great YouTuber that covers Hunter x Hunter and other anime, pointed this out in one of his videos. He talked about how Hunter x Hunter alternates the tone of each arc. To use another example, in the Beatles album Help, the last 2 tracks in the album, Yesterday and Dizzy Miss Lizzy, couldn't be more different in tone. You have Yesterday, which is sad, slower, and reflective, and then afterwards you get Dizzy Miss Lizzy, which is lighthearted, faster, and wild. If they put another dreary song after Yesterday, then it would just drown the listener in a well of sadness. Borderlands 1 did something similar with their opening song choice, Ain't No Rest for the Wicked. Although the subject matter is similar to the rest of the game, the way it is presented is quite the opposite. It is like Dizzy Miss Lizzy compared to the rest of the game's Yesterday-like reflective and slower soundtrack. I think that contrast is needed, because if the game had only one tone, it would get boring, and while the song only appears in the beginning, it gives us just enough to establish two tones. The last thing I want to cover is the game's humor. Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that Borderlands 2 isn't the funnier game, but Borderlands 1 still showed the potential, and even the evolution, of becoming gaming's best dark humor series. The amount of voice dialogue in Borderlands 1 is almost non-existent. Besides Claptrap letting us know that there are new missions available, what we get are things like Scooter telling us about his mama's girl parts, or Tannis' audio recording of her time in Pandora. The rest of the writing you'll find in the mission descriptions. Some of it is actually pretty funny. The evolution begins with the General Knox DLC. We get way more voice dialogue than we've gotten up until then. And that's a good thing, because that content had some of the funniest lines in any Borderlands game easily. You'll be left howling after watching the cutscenes and listening to Moxie's and General Knox's dialogue that's peppered throughout the DLC. Borderlands 1 really comes into its own with the DLCs, and even though it is not consistent like 2, I think it is funny as hell. Borderlands 1 is seriously one of the best games to have come out of that generation. Its high level of quality in gunplay, loot systems, level design, pacing, and length all make it still the best title in the series for me. Thank you for watching.